Welcome to Water for Tomorrow, a semi-cooperative game for 2 to 4 players. At one time, water in this region was plentiful, but population growth, economic development, shifting land use, and climate change have stressed resources in the watershed. And most of what's left is polluted and unusable. Each player will take on a different role: the nature advocate, the small city mayor, the brewing company president, and the farm's founder, to try to both replenish supplies in the watershed and get the clean water they need for their own interests. Now, let's learn to play. Follow the setup instructions found in the rulebook from pages 2 to 3 and based on the number of players you have as well as your desired difficulty setting. For this video, we'll set the game up with 4 people on the normal difficulty setting. This is what each player should have to start out. Your player sheet tells you the character you are playing as in the game. You also have access tokens of the same color, those tokens that look like little people. That blue cube is how you're going to keep track of your water score. In addition, each player has a unique deck of cards for their character. Lastly, those silver tokens are your influence. You'll use them to play your cards. Start with 2 cards drawn from your player deck. Every player will start the game with 1 access token already on the board. These are placed on the symbol that match the one on your player sheet. In Water for Tomorrow, every player can win together, or only 1 player can win on their own. Every player wins together if each player has a score of at least 8 water before 15 years pass. Here, you can see that each player has reached a score of at least 8 water, so everyone wins together. However, if 15 years pass and not every player has a score of at least 8 or more water, then it's only the player with the most water that wins. In this case, it would be the red player with a score of 14 water. Your main goal is for everyone to win together while also protecting your own interests. You'll have to increase your water supply and defend yourself from pollution throughout the game. Now, let's talk about the board. The board is made up of 4 water bodies. Each is a little different than the other, but they all share similar features. Let's take a closer look at Thumb Lake as an example. Each water body has inlets, which are these big, light green rectangles. Throughout the game, you will place your access tokens, as well as water and pollution cubes, on these inlets. These circles are the spaces where water and pollution will go. Each space can hold 1 water or 1 pollution cube at a time. The water cubes are blue, and the pollution cubes are yellow. Those darker green squares are where you will place your access tokens in order to score water. Each inlet can have access tokens from up to 2 different players. In order to score water, you must have an access token on an inlet. In addition, that inlet must be full of water cubes. Once that happens, your score increases by the number of water cubes in the inlet. In this case, the green player would score 3 points, and so they would reflect that on their player sheet. It's important to note that if an inlet is missing any water cubes, or it has a pollution cube in it, then you score no points. Again, the inlet must be full of only water cubes for you to score. Now, let's go over how to play your turn. On your turn, you may take up to 2 actions. Those actions may be gaining 3 influence, drawing 2 cards, or playing a card from your hand. Here's what happens with each action. Your first option on your turn is to choose any player to gain 3 influence. The chosen player takes 3 influence tokens. You will need influence to play cards from your hand throughout the game. Most of the time, you will choose yourself to gain influence, but you might occasionally choose other players to help them out. Your second option is to choose any player to draw 2 cards. The chosen player draws 2 cards from their player deck. Most of the time, you will choose yourself, but you might choose other players occasionally to help them out. Your third option is to play a card from your hand. To play a card, you must spend the influence listed on that card and then follow its instructions. Player cards have various effects, such as adding water and access tokens to the board. When you play a card with the Add Water symbol, you may add water cubes to any empty spaces on the board. Some cards have more than one symbol on them, like this one, which means they have multiple effects when you play them. Whenever you play a card with the minus pollution symbol, you may remove pollution from anywhere on the board. And when you play a card with the draw 1 symbol, you may choose yourself or any other player to draw a card from their player deck. Cards with the access symbol allow you to add your access tokens to the board. Their cost is always listed on the board itself. The access symbol means you may place one of your tokens onto any open inlet on the board. For example, to place one of your access tokens in a Thumb Lake inlet, you must pay 5 influence. If another player wants to join you in the same inlet and therefore score the same water as you, they must pay the second and higher cost. Whenever you play a card and finish using its effects, place it in the discard pile under your player sheet. After taking your 2 actions, you must draw an event card and follow its instructions. Some are good, some are bad. However, many will tell you to increase the year tracker. Event cards will often tell you to roll the die to add water to the board. When rolling the die for water, add 1 water cube to the numbered space matching the number you rolled. If that space already has a water cube, instead, add the cube to the first available empty space in the clockwise direction, shown by the arrows. You may need to place the water cube multiple spaces away, especially as the game progresses. In this way, water will flow across the board. Other event cards will tell you to roll the die to add pollution to the board. Add the pollution in the exact same way as you add water. However, pollution is destructive. If you must add pollution to a space that has water, you have to remove the water before placing the pollution. Pollution cubes can also destroy your access tokens. If an inlet ever has 2 pollution cubes, you must remove all access tokens in that inlet and return them to their players. Finally, pollution will also block water. If you try to add water to a space that has pollution, you just can't add the water there. Even if you've scored water in an inlet, your water score will decrease later in the game if a pollution cube ever replaces the water cubes there. Remember, you don't score points from an inlet unless it's full of clean water. Lastly, let's talk about negotiating. In Water for Tomorrow, you can collaborate by negotiating. If you want to play a card and you want another player to help you pay some or all of its influence cost, you may request help from one other player. That player can help you by spending any amount of their own influence, but they can also negotiate with you for one or more benefits from the card you play. For instance, they could ask that you remove pollution from a space where they have an access token. Remember, your main goal is to win together, so if you feel good about your position, you'll want to do what you can to help your fellow players. Now you're ready to play. Simply roll the dice, and whoever gets the highest number goes first. Roll again to break ties.